Hello, folks. Welcome to the IoT Time podcast. I am Ken Briota, editorial director for IoTEvolutionWorld.com. And here on the IoT Time podcast, we try to talk about the IoT, as the name would suggest. We have a very special episode for you right now. We are here at the IoT Evolution Expo in the Exhibit Hall Theater. As a special treat for you, we're shooting this on video, so you can close your eyes, hold your breath, and wish you weren't looking at my face. I actually have a panel with me today as we talk about some of the implications, ethics, and issues involved in all this big data, privacy, and all that other mess. So I'm going to let my panelists introduce themselves, starting right here.
Great, thank you. Craig Spiesel with the Online Trust Alliance, and we're here to really talk about this week about what we call the IoT Trust Framework. And as industry and our economy becomes data-driven, I think the ethics of how we collect data, how we use it and control it are really key to innovation and to consumer trust.
Hello, my name is Tom Hunt. I'm the CEO of Windspring, and we're in the compression business. So our role is getting data from all of these devices and sensors back to where it can be analyzed.
Hi, I'm Dave McCarthy from B Square Corporation. My company is focused on helping businesses deploy business outcomes. Hello, there we go. So Dave McCarthy from B Square Corporation. My company is focused on helping companies get business outcomes out of IoT solutions. I guess this is a very intimate microphone, I suppose. All right, one last time, Dave McCarthy from B Square Corporation. We help companies deploy IoT solutions. So for us, we're involved right in the mix of helping them understand how they both interact with data that comes off of their equipment and how some of that interacts with the ecosystem that they participate in.
I believe it was the philosopher Bill O'Reilly who said, forget it, we'll do it live. All right, so what we're going to talk about a little bit is what can we do versus what should we do. I have a firm belief that data is value in the IoT. It's really the essence and the lifeblood of everything we're doing. But who owns that data? Who owns the initial data, and then who owns the responsibility for protecting that data and using it in ways that still produces value but doesn't produce undue risk? And I'm going to ask you to start, Craig.
Well, I think personal data is really being mined, and when it's collected with other data sources, it becomes very valuable. But I personally believe consumers shouldn't have to pay twice. Once when they buy a product, and then in perpetuity with their data. So it's very important that consumers really can control that data, because it's not just, like I said, the data bytes that they're being collected in that one discrete point. It's how their activities are being collected from multiple devices, and over time can paint a very comprehensive picture of their lifestyle, their desires, and their personal issues.
So the danger's in the metadata, is what you're saying?
I think that there is a certain amount. I also think that, on the other hand, if consumers are provided clear, concise notice prior to product acquisition, and they understand that trade-off and the value exchange, that's a really good thing. It's when they don't have that notice and don't have that ability to control. And that gets your ethics question.
So, Tom, I want you to answer the same thing, but I want you to also touch a little bit on, since compression is your game, the process of anonymization in transmission, because I feel like that's one piece of this puzzle.
It certainly is, Ken, and I think there's two sides of this equation as well. The first side is the consumer side, and if consumers have their own personal data, it's their data. And then when it gets mixed into other systems, they should be kept very well aware of what's going on with the data, as Craig mentioned. In the IoT space specifically, the industrial IoT, where data is being collected all over the place, it's easy to understand who owns it. It's the person who deployed the system. But how do you protect it and deliver it back to the back end in a secure fashion where you don't have this issue of people hacking into the system or getting intrusion on a small sensor that costs 50 cents, and it's the easiest way into the system. So that's a big issue today.
Dave, I want you to answer the hardest question of all. Where's the line? Where's the threshold between maximizing the value of the data that you've collected and protecting the sources of that data without losing too much?
Well, so I think about just a couple of the topics that are going on today here already, and I think from a consumer side of it,
Bring it closer to your mouth.
I'm gonna have to eat this thing before I'm done with it. I've never seen a microphone that I had to get so far up on. All right, so the answer I think on the consumer side is that a lot of people have already kind of crossed that bridge in terms of they understand that they're willing to trade a little bit of their privacy. How about this one? Oh, see, it wasn't me; it was the microphone. I swear. So, on the consumer side, I think a lot of us have already come to the point that they're willing to trade some level of privacy and information for free stuff, right? We all want to be able to get free email and free news information, and we do that today. I think the problem is that not everybody really understands what that means. Like, what exactly are they giving away? They're very quick to click the EULA or click the, you're about to sign your life away. Does anybody read it? No, you scroll to the bottom and off you go. On the business side, it's interesting because I think on the business side, they all want to own their own data. Nobody really wants to let go of that, and so because they see it, I think, in the enterprise side as really their competitive advantage. If I'm a company and I'm using an IoT solution to understand how a particular piece of equipment works or how to improve my business, that's my competitive advantage. And if I share that with other people, I'm kind of giving away that ability. What I have seen people try to do, though, is make a line between the raw data points themselves, and I think you mentioned it, sort of the insights that you can pull out of that data. And that one is still a little bit of a tricky subject, but I see more options there where you're saying, look, you own the raw data, but if I did the analytics, if I did the hard, heavy lifting, then I should get some value of the fact that I did that for you. And that's something that could be repurposed. So I agree that data is the money. And so I think chasing the money is where this is really going to end up.
So data is an extremely important issue. I think we can all agree on that. It's also super damn boring. So I'm going to try and enliven the situation here. Talk about something more current. Pokemon Go. Everybody wants to talk about it. Everybody's playing it. My Facebook feed will not shut up about it. However, it has been revealed, as you guys may have heard, that in addition to being an awesome AR game, it's also sucking in controls to everybody's Gmail accounts, Google Docs, not just able to read, able to make changes, able to make deletes. The permissions in there are really antediluvian. A, somebody tell me what in the hell they thought they were doing. And was it just, we can get away with it, so let's do it? Or B, what did they hope to gain? I can't even understand what the advantage was. Is it just collecting more stuff?
Being from the Seattle area, I've worked with some of the folks there, and what's kind of ironic is they're very conscious of child protection of games and such as an organization. So I'm not defending them. I really think it was a gross oversight on their part of how they were provisioning access to devices and user accounts. I want to believe that because again, the question comes down is that what is the business purpose of that, and recognizing the court of public opinion and where they're dealing with today. So you talk about
what
ethics.
What is the business purpose, though? Like, this is, I get it, you're a gaming platform, but is this just a gateway to some other end game?
I think Craig's right. I think this was an oversight. If you look at their business model in the past, it's all been related to Google and Google products. So I think their internal infrastructure provided that connectivity in the past, and they just built this AR platform on top of it. And now they've got this shit moment where it's like, holy cow. They've already announced that next release it won't have that. But
well, I
certainly hope not.
They've already addressed part of that already. They shut that functionality off as of yesterday.
That's right.
Yeah, so.
Well, it's an interesting quandary, right? Because everyone's wondering what Nintendo was going to do to become relevant again, and
here it is.
And apparently, they're in the news all the time.
They're going to get nerds to go outside.
And and I thought maybe you were going to go about the fact that people are getting mugged playing.
Well, that's something else. It's really weird. They're getting mugged and they're making friends. Like, you keep hearing all these this weird dichotomy where you get these uplifting stories where, oh, we're making lifelong friends, and I'm just waiting for the first story about a couple who gets married because they met on Pokemon Go. But at the same time, people are getting mugged because some clever-ass criminal stood next to a Pokemon and waited for them.
Well, Michelle Obama's been trying to get kids outside for 8 years, and Pokemon Go did it in a day.
Oh, yeah.
I think one of the things that it illustrates, we talk about security world, is best intentions we don't anticipate how something can be abused or the vulnerabilities. And so this case, clearly I think, again, getting kids out, on Sunday, my wife and I were walking around the neighborhood and we said, what are all these groups together? Because we didn't quite figure it out. And then it like dawned on us. But there was all different ethnic groups. And so it was really odd to see this thing. So that was good. So that's a positive thing, the socialization, getting beyond and getting out. But again, it's that unanticipated thing that, I think we have to remember that they aren't the first company that's made a strategic mistake. Vizio TVs, and I don't want to beat them up, they said, hey, we're only collecting telemetry on some broad features, from feature analysis. And turns out they were collecting all the user profile information. And again, they did not think through and really analyze what data they were collecting.
Yeah, thus the lawsuit, right, that they're involved in right now.
Yeah.
And I think that's actually a really good point, is that as we get into more and more of a connected world and more of an interactive world, it's hard to predict what are some of the, downstream effects of the decisions that you're making in some of these products. I'm sure that there was some product manager out there that said, hey, wouldn't this be great if we could kind of do a land grab of information? And I bet that there was a EULA in there somewhere that said, this is going to do it, that nobody clicked on, right? Or nobody read, they just clicked on it. And then all of a sudden, here are these unfortunate outcomes that Nintendo has to try whether or not this is a really good thing for them because they're getting the mind share of the market and they're generating a whole ton of money. But it is weird that a company that was so protective of children and that experience, that's how they differentiated themselves from guys like Sony and Microsoft in the gaming world, that they kind of had this little bit of a faux pas.
Well, it's not Nintendo.
Well,
Ingress.
Yeah.
Or Niantic is the company.
Niantic is the company.
Oh, got it.
Ingress was sort of like the beta version of Pokemon Go, which I played for a little while. I got bored. But this transitions beautifully into the last thing I want to talk about because I'm almost out of wine. Metadata. Hey, listen, you could have brought your own. I'm not your bartender. I want to talk about metadata because individual data points are interesting. They're fine. But the real power, the real knowledge is in the metadata, in combining different data sets and learning things that there was no way to recognize without them. And that's where the real power is, but it's also where the real danger is. How do you get a valuable set of metadata that does not individually identify the company or the machine or the person that initially generated the data points? Dave, please hit me on that.
Well, actually, part of my business is actually to figure out what that metadata
Shocking
is.
that I went to you
on a
first.
Particular thing. Because, in some of the environments that we work in, we're talking about trying to understand equipment behavior between different manufacturers. So for us, for example, if we're in a power plant, for example, there might be some GE equipment in there might be some Siemens equipment in there, and we're actually trying to profile which ones operate differently because that's some value to our customers that want to know if I'm going to do a services contract on a particular power plant that this is either more reliable equipment or less reliable equipment, and being able to tie that down, that helps them price more effectively as they go forward. So that part, I think, is there. I don't know, Ken. I think I'm going to pass it over to the rest of our panel.
Craig, I'm passing to you.
Okay, hey.
Wow, a lot of chickens up here on the panel.
So, this is not a new issue. We've had device tracking and ad collection, ad networks collecting on the browser. We've had this same discussion on mobile apps for years. We've had multiple efforts on cross-device tracking. And so in the right world, that can be done, a very positive experience for the user. And then this whole debate, but can that data really be anonymous? And what does anonymous really mean? Because reality is with enough horsepower, you can reverse engineer with a very high level probability of who that user is in a certain area.
Well, wasn't it Google and Columbia University, 2 months ago, came out with a study where they were able to identify any specific person if they've ever used an app with the location services on. Doesn't matter what else, they needed that one data point and they could find you specifically. So there's no such thing as anonymous anymore.
That's a lead for you.
And
now.
on that uplifting note, we're running near the end of time here, gentlemen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask each of you to tell us how we can find you on the worldwide interwebs.
You can find me on Twitter at Business of Dave, and then also you can find me on LinkedIn, or of course find more about my company at bsquare.com.
I can be reached at Windspring Inc. or thunt@windspring.com.
So on Twitter at otalliance.org, or I'm sorry, OT Alliance, and our website's otalliance.org/IoT.
And please tweet me at Ken Briota or at IoT Evolution. Visit IoTEvolutionWorld.com for all the fit that's news to print. And make sure that you register for the next IoT Evolution Expo in Fort Lauderdale in January, because you missed this one already, you suckers. Folks, that is all the IoT time we have for today. Thank you so much for joining me. And please, thank you to my live audience today. We'll catch you next time, folks.